Ever since I was a little girl, I'd always wanted to be an actress. Today, I've decided to quit. I grew up in Kansas, so Hollywood was quite literally my Emerald City. Now I'm 26 and would do anything to tell my 16-year-old self to dream up some other fantasy. And no, before you say, well, what did you think? That it'd be a cakewalk. Let me tell you, it's not because it was hard. Nope. In fact, I was a pretty natural talent. I was landing decent-sized parts in bigger productions. I even had a couple of leads in some indies you may have heard of. If you're a film festival nut, I quit because of one job. Yep, one. It was last winter. Things always slow down during the winter. Days are shorter, which means less natural sunlight, which means more compact shooting schedules, which means more shooting days, which means spending more money. So most studios would rather wait for the summer to roll back around, and this winter's days were especially short. Some days, the sun was already down before 1400 p.m. I've never witnessed anything like it. But by this point in my career, I had an agent, a good one too. So generally, he could still keep me busy with odds and ends. One gig that always got floated my way was that of a grocery store customer. At first glance, you'd think it was some simple background role, and in many ways it was. But this particular opportunity paid very well, resulted in very consistent and steady work, and was fronted by an extremely high-profile talent. I never really cared to be a part of it, until I was rejected by their casting department 3 times in a row. What could I possibly not have as an actor that the others did to simply play a background shopper? I was pretty confident I was attractive enough, which I had quickly learned was a hurdle for many of my peers. Simply, my agent would say, they'd like to see some more experience under your belt. Whatever. Where was a gig like that going to get me anyways? But it irked me. Then, this past January, a call from my agent. Hey, the grocery store gig. They want you. I hated that I was excited. I'll never forget my first day on set. 7:30 a.m., still dark as midnight. A Ralph's grocery store. I saw a white tent near the front, and some middle-aged folks rapping over their walkies with coffees in hands. Some other groggy people walked that way, so I followed suit. As I poured myself a cup at the crafty table, a younger man stood next to me, looking over the plastic-wrapped baked goods. He was familiar. Do I know you? I'm Molly, I asked. Oh, hey, I don't think so. This is your first day. Yeah. Hey, were you in Daffodils? Were burning? He looked down shyly. Yeah, actually. Thanks for checking it out. I'm Dimitri. Checking it out. That movie was in every major theater chain last year. What the fuck was he doing here? Dimitri, nice to meet you. Hey, could you tell me a little bit more about what we're doing here? I feel so in the dark right now. He winced, as though I had asked him to help me load a U-Haul. He explained that we were here to serve the fantasy of an immensely famous and wealthy individual. I don't feel comfortable saying who the person is, but it wouldn't be outlandish to say they are one of most well-known, universally beloved artists of all time. I know it sounds ridiculous, but bear with me. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I'll just refer to the person as Bob for the sake of the story. Dimitri looked about cautiously and quietly explained. Bob had apparently become so famous, it became impossible for them to live a normal life. They began to yearn for normality so much that they started doing this, creating manufactured environments with actors. Actors who were trained to treat them normally, to not lose their shit when they entered the room. The assistant director, Frank, came in with a tight white button-up that made his gut protrude like a half moon. He motioned for everyone to take a seat in the row of white folding chairs before him. He took a big swig of his morning coffee, further staining his already yellow teeth. All right, I see 1, 2, 3 new faces. Welcome. I'll keep it brief since most of you already know the drill. I looked around trying to identify who the new faces could be, but it was impossible to tell in the sea of faces. There were at least 100 of us. Rule number 1. Your motivation is that of a shopper. You treat this grocery store like your own. Look for the things you would look for. If you finish early, think of a new recipe you'd like to try. You get the idea. Someone 2 rows in front of me was taking notes. A stocky, bald man. Rule number 2. If Bob approaches you to make small talk, you must speak to them as though they are a total stranger. You can be rude, you can be kind, but you cannot act as though you know them. Already I felt uncomfortable. I was a pro, but I was already feeling unnaturally nervous. What would I say if Bob approached me? Rule number 3. Everyone say it with me. Everyone around me joined together in a harmony of drab. Absolutely. Positively. No eye contact. What the fuck I mean? I'd heard of celebrities pulling shit like this, but this person, I'd always thought of them as so humble and down to earth, solely based on podcast appearances and talk shows. Of course, the stocky, bald man raised his hand, but Frank pretended to not notice. 5 minutes, everyone. Then collect your production money, grab your cart, and get shopping. We all lined up in front of a white plastic table. A production assistant sullenly handed out $200 in 20s to each of us for us to buy groceries with. It appeared to be real money as far as I could tell. There was a fragility to this operation that I could feel as I walked around set. It felt as though if even one person stepped out of line or pulled a stunt, that any and all of this could come crumbling down. I was beginning to understand why there had seemingly been so many hoops for me to jump through to get here now. 9 a.m. sharp, we all begin shopping. Believe it or not, I actually had prepared a little grocery list the night before. Just an actor's tick, I guess. I began to go down the list, really taking my time with each item, looking around at the others. It really just looked like a bunch of other customers at a grocery store. It wasn't hard to get lost in the illusion of it at all. Then it really dawned on me how nuanced some of their performances were. The way one performer would accidentally knock a can off a shelf. The way another would round a corner and take a bite of a fruit they had no intention of purchasing. It had all the funny details of real life, not to mention an entire other cast of people working the jobs. A register, butcher, baker, all seemingly carrying out the actual duties of each department. Just as I was getting lost in the fantasy of it all, the atmosphere shifted. In through the sliding glass doors came Bob. They looked older than I thought they would, but then again, this was a celebrity, rarely seen in public, but often on the covers of magazines and red carpets. None of the glitz and glamour was here. I realized then that I had been staring and went right back to shopping. I sort of kept Bob in the corner of my eye and tried to navigate the store in a way where I wouldn't have to run into them. Eventually, I lost track of them and decided to camp out by the avocados and find the very best one. I took a long time meditatively squeezing each one. I'm not sure how much time passed by, but eventually, a voice startled me from behind. Any keepers? I spun around to see Bob was standing right in front of me. I was starstruck, but remembered to not look into their eyes just in the nick of time. Oh, yeah, a few good ones. I sputtered. Well, leave a couple for the rest of us, eh? That charisma, I'd heard it on talk shows and interviews for so many years. It was exactly the same, but in real life, it felt so manufactured and foreign in the normality of a Ralph's. Oh, of course. Here, these ones should do. Bob took the avocados into their basket. Thanks, dear Say. You new to the neighborhood? I'm not sure I've seen you around before. In the corner of my eye, I noticed one of the staff members at the cash register was grumbling quickly into a walkie-talkie. I quickly started to move, pushing my cart in the other direction.
Oh, ha ha ha. Yeah, just moved around the bend here.
See you around! As I gave Bob a little wave, I thought for maybe just a moment, through the slits in my fingers, we made eye contact, but I couldn't really be sure. So how could anyone else? I shopped mostly in peace for another hour or so. Bob checked out about 20 minutes before me. Once I checked out and returned to the parking lot, Frank approached me with a coffee-stained envelope. "See you Monday, week after next," he asked chipperly. "Yeah. See you then." When I got home, I kept running through everything I had seen that day. It was all so strange, yet I had nothing to really grasp as to convince myself that anything was out of the ordinary. Of course, the whole thing was weird, but the oddity of being that famous almost warranted solutions as bizarre as this. No, it was something else. The way Dimitri spoke to me. The way everyone treated that third rule like religion. And Bob. Whatever. The money was good. Really good. And it was the slow season. Plus, to be working alongside people like Dimitri could lead to more exciting opportunities later. 2 weeks later. 7:30 a.m. Ralph's. We sat under the big white tent once again. However, I noticed the stocky man from before was missing. I never even learned his name. Dimitri sat next to me. "Hey, Molly. How goes it?" "Oh, hey! Good! Good!" "I heard you had a scene with Bob yesterday. That's cool. Still yet to chat me up." "Oh, really? Haha. Yeah, it was nice. Seems like a nice dude." Dimitri forced a grin. "Oh, yeah, nicest guy." I looked back to the empty seat where the stocky man once sat. "Hey, do you happen to know what happened to the other new guy, Baldy?" Dimitri suddenly looked nervous. "Oh, no, I didn't realize he was gone." Dimitri did a 360 around the room. "Yeah, damn. Sucks to fuck up that early on." "You think they fired him?" "Yeah, he probably looked." "Damn!" I was so close. Frank entered the room in the same white button-up, stained coffee drips tattooed onto the side of his used paper cup. "Chop, chop, let's go. Everyone." Everyone got to work shopping. 10 minutes went by. 30, then an hour. Then 2. No Bob. I was just about running out of items on my extensive faux shopping list when suddenly Frank's voice crackled to life over the intercom. "Everyone go home. Bob took an impromptu trip with his new friend. Won't be coming in." Everyone immediately abandoned their shopping cart, swiftly collapsing the illusion that had been in perpetual motion the past 2 hours. We all walked outside, collected our money, and went home. That night, I cracked a beer and turned on the TV set. Lo and behold, there was Bob on a rerun of The Tonight Show, cracking up over some personal anecdote from their extravagant life. Except watching them now, I felt no envy. Ever since I was a little girl in Kansas, all I wanted was to be on that screen, laughing with a white man in a suit. But even getting a little taste of the top this month, it felt gross. It felt hollow and inhuman. As I sat on my armchair, nursing my third beer of the night, I slowly began to fade into slumber. However, just as I could, my phone began to hum on the coffee table. Its buzz slowly pulled me back into consciousness. I wish with all my being that I would have just fallen back asleep that night. Frank's voice came through, scratchy and heavy. I could almost smell his festering mouth just in his words. He was panicking, explained that Bob has decided to do a late-night snack run, and they needed actors ASAP. Double the rate for those who could make it. Granted, I should have said no. I was pretty out of it, but I couldn't say no to double the cash. He promised it'd only be an hour tops, so I changed, splashed some water in my face, called an Uber, and made my way there. Upon arriving, there was no white tent, no crafty or morning coffee. Frank and a couple other department leaders seemed to have just arrived as well. They ushered me inside quickly with a small handful of others desperate enough to take the call. It was only about 5 minutes after I began my shopping that Bob arrived. They looked horrible. They had tear-stained eyes and quickly shuffled their way towards the frozen aisle. In my still, half-drunken state, a wash of sympathy rushed over me in that moment. I felt bad for Bob. What a miserable life it must be to organize all of this just to feel normal. It must be eating them away inside. I meandered my way over to the frozen aisle too. Bob was shuffling through pints of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Maybe they weren't so different from everyone else after all. I wanted to go and say something, but would I get fired? I didn't get it. It seemed to me that someone like Bob would want the connection of another person. Why would I get fired for looking them in the eye? My intoxicated state decided I didn't care if I got fired anymore, and that I wanted to help this person. I stumbled over to Bob, who was wiping away fresh tears. "Hey there, avocado guy. You all right?" Bob looked me in the eyes. They were like spiraling pools of shimmering ocean water. So beautiful, so organically spectacular. Even in my drunken state, I could appreciate just how striking their eyes were in person. Bob cracked a smile. "Oh, hey. Avocado lady. Thanks. But no, I'm not all right. It's been a rough day." I pointed to the Ben & Jerry's tub in Bob's hand. "Chocolate therapy. Must have been really rough." Bob giggled a little, never breaking eye contact with me. He almost seemed excited about it. I heard a groan from across the hall behind me. But I was too caught up with Bob now. I couldn't believe we were having this isolated, seemingly deep moment, or scene. Together, Bob reached out their hand to me. "I'm Bob. Nice to meet you." I reached out mine. "Molly, you as well." Bob looked down at their ice cream. "Well, maybe I'll see you around sometime." I smiled warmly. "Sure. That'd be nice." Bob checked out with their single pint of ice cream and exited the store. Only about 5 minutes later did Frank come over the intercom and inform everyone we were good to collect our pay and head home. However, as I left, Frank pulled me aside. He looked at me gravely. "I'm sorry, Molly, but we can't have you back after today." A jolt of anxiety struck through me. I knew this could happen. What? Why? I don't know why I played dumb. I guess I just wanted to hear him say it. "You looked..." I didn't get to bed until about 3 a.m. and naturally slept in a bit later than usual. It wasn't often I was woken by the sun during these short winter days. I had almost forgotten how much I loved that. I rolled over in bed, snagged my phone, and unlocked it to check my messages. My heart stopped. 3 messages from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Bob. What are you doing today? I thought maybe we could go out for dinner. Sorry if this is too forward. I just feel like we had a special connection last night." What the fuck? It's moments like these that really make me hesitate to even share who this person is, because it would instantly make you think what I'm relaying is a lie. It feels more true when I withhold it. Where do I even begin to convey the way I felt in this moment? Flattered, horrified, exhilarated, numb, I don't know. But one thing I did know is that this was the opportunity of a lifetime, and I was not about to let it pass me by. I won't lie, I was a little freaked out. Where had they gotten my number? The call sheet? Did Bob even know there was one? However, I decided I simply couldn't trouble myself with these concerns. If I actually became friends with Bob, who knows what it could mean for my career as an actor? What opportunities could come my way? Hey, Bob. Nice to hear from you. Yes, I'd love to. When and where were you thinking? We met at Takuetsu in the heart of downtown LA. I guess it means excellence in Japanese. When I arrived, the staff personally escorted me to the back entrance. The staff guided me through the kitchen, where I saw a brigade of young Japanese men executing at the absolute highest caliber of their craft, slicing sushi in what to me seemed like slow motion. Every decision, every step was so calculated. I was brought through 2 double doors to a side of the restaurant that was clearly private. Within that room were a series of private dining rooms. A glass door to one slid open, and there was Bob sitting crisscrossed at a low, traditional Japanese-style table. Molly, so wonderful to see you. Their voice sounded like gold. It was still familiar to me as their own, but it was, at the same time, so different, so much more alluring than I remember in the grocery store. Thank you so much, Bob. I've never been somewhere like this before. We had an amazing meal. Things were a little rocky for me at start, mostly due to still being a bit starstruck at what was occurring. But Bob had a way of making you feel so comfortable. I gradually was able to loosen up and just be myself. Bob mentioned that he had a highly exclusive ceremony coming up next month with a lot of industry professionals in attendance, and they wanted me to join them. I almost felt bad, as I genuinely felt I was getting to know Bob as a person, and felt guilty for getting to benefit off of them in this way. But I couldn't say no. It would have been rude anyway, right? I'd love to. Bob and I got together a few more times. Lunch at the Sunset Diner, a movie at the Chinese Theater. They even helped me rehearse for a couple auditions, but the creeping uncertainty of Bob's reality crawled back under my skin during an afternoon trip to the LA Zoo. We were standing next to 2 little boys outside of the lion enclosure. One of them slapped the other on the shoulder, seemingly annoyed. That's when I heard one of them whisper to the other. "Stop!" Frank said. "Don't look!" I mean, they could have just been referring to some other Frank. Maybe their father, telling them not to mess with the lions. But part of me knew that wasn't true. I looked around at the zoogoers, but I didn't recognize anyone. It was the day before Bob's big ceremony. He proclaimed he would buy me a new dress for the big night. I still don't know why it never occurred to me to ask Bob what this ceremony actually was. Was it the Oscars? Tonys, Emmys, Grammys with Bob? They really could be attending any of them, as the guest of honor no less, but I didn't care. I felt like a goddess around Bob. How could you not? So that brings us to yesterday. I was to be picked up in a limo. Even though I was excited, I still didn't really buy that any of it was real. I did everything in my mind to stamp out the feeling that something was off, that maybe something was about to go wrong. But no matter what I did, that deep, gnawing feeling wouldn't leave me. The limo arrived at 11:30 a.m. as planned. I got inside, and there was Bob sitting comfortably in the black leather interior. The limo driver, hidden behind a tinted window. "Hey, Molly, ready to go?" There was such a childlike glee in Bob's voice. It was contagious. "Yeah, let's do this." Our chariot began to roll gracefully down my humble street. I wondered if any of my neighbors had seen me get in here. I'd never been in one before. It was pristinely clean. There were snacks and drinks all loaded up in a basket between us. But I wasn't hungry. My stomach was full of butterflies thrashing about. Time melted away as Bob and I chatted in our usual flow. They were so easy to talk to. I took a peek out the window and noticed we were no longer in the city. Long stretches of trees surrounded us on a narrow, windy road. "Where are we going, Bob?" "You'll see. Molly, it's beautiful." We pulled up to an opening in a thick, lush forest. It was already getting dark out. Other limos were lined up side by side at the opening of the forest. What was this Bob had hyped it up so much? I didn't want my speculation to put a damper on things, so I elected to keep my mouth shut. A long, rolled red carpet fit snugly into a dirt path that led deep into the woods. I stood at the head of the red carpet. Something deep inside me started to say, to turn back, that this was wrong. It made no sense. It was like something out of a dream. A nightmare. But Bob stood there next to me, offering their hand. Their glistening baby blue eyes piercing my heart. I walked with Bob down the red carpet. As the sunlight disappeared into the trees around us, a new glow emerged in the distance. Almost there. Molly. The red carpet became more bumpy the deeper we went. The thick roots of the trees were unavoidable, and the geography less touched by man. We turned a bend and entered a clearing. A seemingly pleasant party was in full effect. China ball-style lights hung from tree branches and other celebrities, many of which you would certainly know, stood about chatting to one another in the peaceful buzz of nighttime nature. A young man in a suit with a tight red bow tie walked about with many appetizers on a silver platter. I've always been a sucker for pigs in a blanket. I motioned to Bob, and they chuckled. I approached the server. Excuse me, but... The server turned, now revealed to be Dimitri. Oh, Dimitri. They showed no recollection of who I was. Sorry, madame. Would you like an hors d'oeuvre? Dimitri, it's me, Molly. Do you not remember? Dimitri smiled, looking just below my chin. I'm sorry, miss. You must have me mistaken for somebody else. Dimitri walked away with the grace of someone who was definitely not panicking the way I now was. What was going on here? Where was I? And why would Dimitri not look me in the eyes just then? Just then, the jingle of a little bell sounded tinged through the soft, cool night. Attention, everyone! Bob was now holding court in the middle of the party. I'd like to introduce this month's guest of honor. Bob motioned their hand out towards me. Every celebrity I had grown up watching was suddenly staring, their soft, knowing looks overloading my very soul to its brim with fear. Why? When I first met Molly, she showed a level of love and connection that I haven't bore witness to in a long time. She is most certainly deserving of a better life. One of wealth, admiration, and abundance. Shall we let her walk with us? Shall we let her share our fortune? Everyone lifted their glass, as if toasting some new life for me. Just as I began to try and even decipher what the fuck Bob had just said, I heard yelling. Crazed yelling, coming from deep within the woods, from the shadows. Small woodland creatures scattered about the party. Disgruntled looks began to infect the faces of the party guests. Close your eyes. They'll take you. From the woods, the stocky man I had met on my first day emerged. He was completely naked, and now, rail-thin. Flabs of loose skin swung from his arms. His eyes were bloodshot and dried up. He whimpered like a sick dog that had no tears left to cry. I noticed all the butlers had fallen to the ground as well, hiding their faces in the grass below. The stocky man wilted like a dying flower, the last life force he had, exerted through his pointing finger. He took a deep breath and pleaded to me, "Run, run while you still can." I looked around me. The members of this prestigious party looked at me with a gaze of building intensity. At this moment, Bob felt like the only person I had left to turn to, but I wish I never had. Bob, what's going on here? Bob began to frown. But not a natural frown. It was more like strings that had been holding the corners of their mouth up had been snapped loose. Their eyes, once sparkling ocean blue, were now dark as midnight riptides. Slowly but surely, every piece of Bob began to deconstruct. Bob's hair began to shrivel like dried grass atop their head. I took a step back in fear and tripped on a nearby tree root protruding from the ground. Bob towered over me, face to face with them. I felt myself slipping into a psychedelic-like trance. On command, their face seemingly unfolded like a blossoming flower of flesh. Centered amongst the bloody petals was their skull. The white of it began to glow and shifted to a powerful electric blue. In this dreamlike state, I had an unconscious revelation. This radiating light, emanating off their hot mineral brain case, was the source of all their brilliance, all their charm. Bob was not human. They were something greater. The heat of their being forced me to turn away from Bob, seeing the grass below me. Something real, tangible, suddenly sobered my mind. Waves of fear crashed through my nervous system like a flash flood. I became paralyzed. I wanted to wake up so badly, I would have rather died than live out another second in that reality. Your eyes, they'll steal your eyes. The stocky man's final cries turned to chunky gargles. It sounded like someone tore his esophagus straight out of his throat. I ran. As fast as my body could take me, I only looked back once. Dimitri's face in the grass, TV personalities, child stars, and musicians I listened to on a daily basis, all transformed into what I can only describe as a blur of God's ugliest, most vile designs. After a while of aimless sprinting, I came across the red carpet. I tore down it as my guide for what felt like forever. Isn't it supposed to feel faster on the way back? As I grew weaker, I could hear Bob in my ear, repeating quickly in a sharp whisper. Molly, 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 Molly. Ollie, Molly, Molly, Molly. Tears leapt from the ledges of my eyes. It felt like he was right behind me. I turned and saw that he was, in fact, at least a mile back. This confused, but relieved me for a moment. However, only as I continued running did I realize that Bob was closing in on me with incredible, seemingly impossible speed. Molly, 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 their beaming skull chattering my name over and over, illuminating the dark woods like a flaming meteor. It felt like every part of my body and mind that was not essential to my escape just shut off right then and there. It all becomes a haze to recall until I could see the limo just ahead and Frank, in that stupid white button-up smoking against the hood of the car. Frank, I yelled with adamance. Frank spun and turned to see my running, and likely the nightmare close behind. He dropped his cigarette and shielded his eyes swiftly. Start the car. Frank hesitated, but then shuddered, and whatever might happen to him if he waited any longer. Frank started the car. The headlights nearly blinded me for the final stretch. As Bob closed in behind me, I could smell their blood, dripping from their own torn skin, evaporating on the surface of their burning skull. Finally, I reached the car, swung the door open, forced myself inside, and slammed the door shut with me. Drive. Frank, seemingly unfamiliar with how to drive a limo, awkwardly jerked us forward, back, and then peeled off down the dirt road we came in on. As we pulled away, Bob merely stood in the distance behind us. The blur of their face slowly began retaking its normal, handsome self. I could feel their restrained fury in my body for the first few miles. My eyes stuck on patrol out the back window. However, once Frank started mumbling about how he would lose his job over this, I could somehow feel we were safe. This morning, I immediately began packing my things. I just checked into a hotel about 50 miles outside of town. Bob was smiling on the TV when I came in. Some soap opera he did when he was probably closer to my age, buzzing with that same raw young talent that reminded me of poor Dimitri. I unplugged the TV set. I don't know where I'm going from here. I hear they don't have Ralph's in San Francisco. That'll do for now.